The rain hammered against the windows of the old Victorian house, its rhythmic patter the only sound breaking the silence of the night. Inside, the air was thick with the metallic tang of blood. Detective Laura Hayes stood in the doorway of the master bedroom, her sharp eyes scanning the scene. The bed was drenched in crimson, the white sheets now a grotesque canvas of violence. A pool of blood had seeped through the mattress, dripping onto the floor below. The victim, a woman in her early 30s, lay sprawled across the bed, her lifeless eyes staring at the ceiling. Her throat had been slit, the wound deep and precise. Laura clenched her jaw, her mind already racing to piece together what had happened. The victim was identified as Claire Bennett, a successful real estate agent with no known enemies. Her husband, Mark Bennett, had called 911 in a panic, claiming he had returned home from a business trip to find his wife dead. Mark was now sitting in the living room, his face pale and hands trembling, as he answered questions from Laura's partner, Detective James Carter. Laura observed him from the corner of her eye. His grief seemed genuine, but something about his story didn't add up. The blood on the bed was fresh, too fresh for Claire to have been killed hours ago, as Mark had claimed. Laura moved closer to the bed, her gloved hands carefully examining the scene. A faint smudge of blood on the nightstand caught her attention. It looked like a partial fingerprint, but it was too smeared to be useful. She crouched down, her eyes narrowing as she spotted a small, almost imperceptible scratch on the wooden floor near the bed. It was fresh, as if something heavy had been dragged across it. Her mind flashed back to Mark's suitcase, still sitting by the front door. Had he brought it upstairs? And if so, why? Downstairs, James was growing increasingly suspicious of Mark. The man's alibi was shaky at best. He claimed to have been at a conference in the next city over, but a quick call to the hotel confirmed he had checked out early that morning. When pressed, Mark stammered, his story unraveling. I came home early to surprise Claire," he said, his voice cracking. "But when I got here, she was already—" He trailed off, burying his face in his hands. James exchanged a glance with Laura, who had just entered the room. They both knew Mark was hiding something. Laura decided to search the house for clues. In the study, she found a locked drawer in Claire's desk. Using a paperclip, she picked the lock and opened it. Inside was a stack of letters, all addressed to Claire from a man named Daniel. The letters were filled with declarations of love and promises of a future together. Laura's heart sank as she realized Claire had been having an affair. She quickly photographed the letters and returned them to the drawer. If Mark had discovered the affair, it would give him a motive. But was it enough to drive him to murder? Back in the living room, James was growing impatient. "Mark, we know about Daniel," he said, his voice firm. Mark's face went white. Who's Daniel?" he stammered. Laura stepped in, holding up one of the letters. "Claire was having an affair," she said, her tone calm but accusatory. Mark's eyes filled with tears. I didn't know," he whispered. "But even if I had, I would never hurt her. I loved her." Laura studied his face, searching for any sign of deception. He seemed sincere, but she couldn't shake the feeling that he was lying. The forensic team arrived and began processing the scene. As they worked, Laura and James reviewed the evidence. The blood on the bed, the scratch on the floor, the letters in the drawer. It all pointed to a crime of passion. But something still didn't feel right. Laura returned to the bedroom, her eyes scanning the room once more. This time, she noticed something she had missed before. a faint trail of blood leading from the bed to the closet. She opened the closet door and gasped. Inside was a bloody knife, its blade still glistening with fresh blood. But what shocked her more was the sight of Daniel's lifeless body, slumped in the corner. The pieces of the puzzle suddenly fell into place. Mark had come home early and found Claire with Daniel. In a fit of rage, he had killed them both, then staged the scene to make it look like Claire had been the only victim. The scratch on the floor was from dragging Daniel's body to the closet. The blood on the bed was from both victims. Laura's heart raced as she realized the truth. She rushed downstairs to confront Mark, but he was already gone. The front door stood open, the rain pouring in. James cursed under his breath and radioed for backup. Hours later, Mark was found at a nearby motel, his clothes still stained with blood. He confessed to the murders, his voice hollow with regret. "I loved her," he said, tears streaming down his face. "But I couldn't let her leave me." Laura watched as he was led away in handcuffs, her mind heavy with the weight of the case. The blood on the bed had told a story, but it was one she wished she had never had to uncover. As the rain continued to fall, she couldn't help but wonder how many more stories like this were waiting to be told.